The other student who pretends to understand true Krishnamacharya's yoga is Sri Pattabhi Joyce, the founder of so-called Ashtanga yoga style. I assume many of listeners may know Ashtanga yoga. So as many know, Ashtanga is a dynamic muscle yoga. It's very jumping and it develops cardio and breathing. If we would try to understand what is the greatness of this man, we might take a look at the following. We should take a look on how modern Hindus, non-systematic, do practice yoga. For instance, in Rishikesh or Gangotri, yogas practice some their own styles of yoga. Once I had met such a practitioner in Rishikesh. He has his own cave, well, with the door, with the lock, and he doesn't need much else there. There is enough water in Ganges, there are enough bananas on the trees, and he commits his own practice. So I talked to him and asked, so how do you practice yoga? And he replied that he had a teacher in Gangotri, which is substantially far to the north. He showed me 10 asanas, so I practiced these asanas. He showed that asanas to me. Well, in my opinion, he does it very poorly. So obviously these asanas were shown to him, but he was given no clues and no keys to them. Well, maybe if he will practice them on his own another 10 years, he will understand how they work. Or maybe he will not, but he performs them without any particular effect. And I asked him, why don't you live with your teacher? And his teacher is a very old man, about 101 years old. He eats only tapas, no food, and he reasonably replied that my teacher lives far to the north. And it's cold there, it's snowy, he has lots of inner heat, but I don't have that heat. Well, and it's warm in Rishikesh, it's okay there. And that's how it goes. So why did I mention this? In non-systematic yoga, the asana practice had become a kind of religious, ritualistic activity without any particular effort and effect. And Pattabhi Joyce had introduced the training process approach to the very practice of Hatha Yoga. Surely the very idea was European, so he introduced such ideas as training cycle, advancement in training, and so on. And for Hindus who didn't have that aspect, that was a huge contribution and leap. Furthermore, Pattabhi Joyce had introduced the bundles of asanas. Well, surely it's prescribed to Krishnamacharya's origin, but however, this is as usual a metaphysical question rather than practical. So he made like first, second, third bundle of asanas with correct transitions, with correct breathing, and you just take it and practice it. So-called vinyasas did he introduce. And Pattabhi Joyce was a great popularizer of yoga. Almost all the Mysore yoga schools are in this or that way connected to Pattabhi Joyce. But as usual, there are some nuances which should be mentioned. First thing to mention is that the brand which Pattabhi Joyce Yoga uses, so-called Ashtanga Yoga, the 8-stage yoga, has nothing to do with the original Ashtanga Yoga of Patanjali. Moreover, the classical yoga experience, which is described by Patanjali as Chittavritti Nirodha, Pattabhi Joyce says to be reached by performing the exercises. Surely, if one would take an Ashtanga Yoga complex and would practice it for a couple of hours, he will definitely reach the state of non-consciousness, non-thinking. But what does it have to do with Chittavritti Nirodha? If one would chop wood for a couple of hours, he will reach the very same state of non-thinking. So it's a usual athlete's effect. When you train, the energy goes to your muscles, but not to your brain. The brain seemingly calms down, but it doesn't become clear and sharp, as in Patanjali's yoga. Drashtar doesn't get to its natural state and you are unable to perform samyama. So Ashtanga is nothing more than just a brand, and it has nothing to do with the Patanjali's classical yoga system. The next thing which I consider to be a step back from Krishnamacharya's is the avoiding of individualization of complex. So there are fixed Pattabhi Joyce Mysore asana complexes. When you finish the first one, you get to the next one, and so on. But what if someone needs some other asanas, some other exercises than these? Maybe he needs some utterly other style of yoga practice. No, says Pattabhi Joyce, everybody will do just this. Practice, practice, all is coming, as his favorite motto. 1% of theory and 99% of practice. That's his other motto. Obviously, this is a drawback. The next thing is the reduction of time spent in asanas. From the point of view of general physical load, Ashtanga is remarkable. But from the perspective of inner reflection of what happens within the long standing in asana, that my source school had lost completely. 5 breathes in the asana is not nearly enough. Already mentioned Mark Singleton in his Body of Yoga thinks that the idea of 5 breathes within asana was made by Krishnamacharya for demonstrational asana purposes. When Krishnamacharya exhibited asanas in Mysore Palace and taught them to children, it was not nearly cool to sit in asana for 40 or even for 5 minutes. So it's 5 breathes, and next beautiful asana, and one more beautiful asana, and so on. So this served not to therapeutic but to demonstrational purposes. But Pattabhi Joyce school concentrated on this very approach. And next, what is common for both Pattabhi Joyce and Iyengar yoga schools is refusal of any kind of artistic and creative approach from the practitioners. The ideas that one can create his own complex or his own understanding of asanas is totally distracted in favor of canonical approach, which I think to be a wrong approach. Then surely it looks more like sports, it has no real meditations, and it has limited usage. The people of neurotic type who simply cannot stay for a long time in one single posture like Ashtanga very much, because you have just to jump from one state to the other, very fastly transforming from one pose to the other. For such a person it would be much more beneficial to practice the deepening, the slow kind of yoga, which is lost, in fact, in Pattabhi Joyce school. And talking about borrowings, as Mark Singleton mentions, there are lots of borrowings from English athlete gymnastics of the early 20th century. Many exercises performed by British soldiers of that time are known now as Ashtanga exercises. So, as in the case of Iyengar, this is also not a classical yoga system. As of today, Pattabhi Joyce's school is headed by the Saraswati Joyce. Here she is with our instructors. Now Sharadh is starting to command the school, and there are some other systems and schools of this kind like Sheshadri.